Well, happy Friday to you and yours across the Delaware Valley, and more importantly, a happy parade day for all Eagles fans. Welcome into the PHLY Phillies Podcast. Tyler Zulli, Andrew Frazier here with you for a half an hour today, a little bit of an abbreviated show. Had a little bit of things we needed to move around, some time constraints with the parade. We want to be able to celebrate with you. So we're just going to go for a half an hour today. We'll be back at our hour-long podcast on Fridays beginning next week, and we'll talk to Jim Salisbury beginning next week as well. We're going to get into three different players today, and one of which is the Phillies' third baseman, Alec Bohm. But today's show revolves around the fact that I think the entire time that the offseason has played out, the entire time that moves have been made, the answer was simple for us as to who is the best course of action for the Phillies heading into 2025 to be the Phillies' third baseman. I think it's always been Alec Bohm. And it's been Alec Bohm for a multitude of reasons. So we're going to get into that as the show progresses. But first, let's talk about the big news of the week. Earlier this week, Alex Bregman agreed to a huge deal with the Boston Red Sox, a 3-year deal worth $120 million. Now, there are opt-outs after the 2025 and 2026 season. So theoretically, this could be a 1-year deal. If Bregman feels like he wants to go and test the market next year, it could be a 2-year deal. It really could be any amount of years on this deal. But the Red Sox have proven that they mean business this offseason. Of course, they acquired Garrett Crochet earlier in the offseason. They go out and get Bregman. This is a team that I think is ready to compete. I've been pretty high on their pitching staff prior to the acquisition of Crochet. I think it was a really savvy move for them to go get a top-of-the-line rotation guy in Crochet to headline a group of guys that I think it's like the all-potential team. It's a rotation that I think potentially could be excellent. Behind Crochet, Tanner Houck, Brian Bayo. It's just going to be a group that I think could come together in a really positive way. I think Boston fans have longed for a team. Now, Boston fans are spoiled with 4 World Series since 2004, but the last couple of years have been less than stellar years for the Red Sox. I think this is a Red Sox team that is looking to break out this season, and they're not making any bones about it. And spending $40 million a year on Alex Bregman kind of seems like it's the icing on the cake for an offseason that was pretty productive for them. And in fact, I think pretty successful. I think you're going to see a lot of lists and things like that list out, winners and losers of the offseason. And I think the Boston Red Sox are going to headline winners portions quite a bit. So why Alex Bregman? Well, I think for Alex Bregman's sake, it makes a ton of sense. In 21 games at Fenway Park, he hit .375. He slashed .375, .490, and .750. 9 extra base hits, 15 RBI. So for Bregman, it makes a ton of sense. It's a contract that is super favorable for him. Again, he can get out of it at any given time after any year. So if he plays exceptionally well this season and decides that he could get more than $40 million a year, maybe he'll go out and test the markets again next season. But he could also do it after 26 or become an unrestricted free agent at the end of this 3-year deal. Still young enough at 30 years old to be able to kind of make a play like this, where if he does play well, a long-term deal, probably his final long-term deal, is not outside of the realm of possibility. So I think this is an excellent move for Alex Bregman, both monetarily and contractually and career-wise. For the Boston Red Sox, again, I think this signals that they are ready to compete and they're ready to win. The question to me is, where will Alex Bregman play? Now, the reports say that Bregman may play second base because, quite frankly, the Red Sox have a logjam of players who are not particularly good defenders. Let's start at Bregman's natural position at third base. I think the obvious answer, the easiest answer, would be for Alex Bregman to just go play third. He's a Gold Glove winner there last year. He's an above-average defender, a really, really good athlete, can play all over the diamond if necessary, but I think in a perfect world, Alex Bregman just plays third base, and you figure the rest of it out. Here's the problem with that. Rafi Devers is at third base right now. Rafi Devers is a disgustingly bad defensive third baseman. And Andrew, if you can show the numbers for Rafael Devers over the last couple of seasons, these are his, and let me give you an idea of what these call letters are. OAA is outs above replacement. FRV is fielding run value. DRS is defensive runs saved. A -6 in 2024, an outs above replacement, a -8 in 23, a -2 in 2022, and a disgustingly bad -13 in 2021. He's ranked no better than 127th in Major League Baseball in terms of fielding run value, and he's ranked no better that's amongst active third basemen who have played at least a couple of innings at third base, and then across baseball, he ranked 190th in defensive runs saved. His best being last year at 101st. You can tell, like, year by year, Rafael Devers is not a good defensive third baseman. I think that's a pretty evident, like, you don't need these metrics to tell you that. Like, if you watch Red Sox baseball, you can tell that Rafi Devers is just not a very good defensive third baseman. He's been a significant, as I mentioned, a significant outs above average each of the last 4 years. The fielding run values are bad. The metrics are bad. And then your eyeballs tell you he's not very good defensively either. So the point is, Rafi Devers probably should be playing a different position defensively. But where? I think in an ideal world for Rafael Devers, he's an everyday DH. But that leaves you with, what do you do with Masataka Yoshida, who is an equally bad defender in the outfield? Now, Tristan Casas is at first base right now for the Red Sox. Theoretically, Rafael Devers could probably play first if you wanted him to. But what do you do with Casas at this point? I think it's one of those situations where you have one too many bad defenders. Not to say that Casas is a bad defender compared to Devers and Yoshida, but it's you have one too many bad defenders. Somebody has to be your DH. And I think mitigating disaster is the best course of action for me. So if I were making these decisions, Yoshida's awful defensively in left field, and Devers is awful defensively at third base. So you're choosing between one of those two guys if you feel that those two guys should be your prime DH candidates. You're choosing between one of those two guys to say, one of these guys has to be our DH and one of them has to be in the field. And so I think the likeliest outcome for the Boston Red Sox is that it's going to be Rafi Devers at third, which is not great, but he's been there for 4 years. I think they'll live with the consequences of him being at third for another season. So I think it's probably going to be Rafi Devers at third. Then it comes down to Alex Bregman probably moves over to second, like the reports indicate. I think you'd prefer Bregman at third defensively compared to Devers, but if you're trying to mitigate and limit moving parts, my assumption would be that it's going to be Devers at third, Bregman at second, Casas at first, and Yoshida as your DH. Now, there is a world where the Red Sox could trade Tristan Casas for somebody else. I don't know what that exactly looks like. The theory was that maybe Casas would be in a Garrett Crochet trade before they acquired him. They did not have to move Casas in that deal. They only moved Kyle Teal and a handful of different guys. So I think the Red Sox played from a position of strength this offseason. It's one of those situations where I think it's a good problem to have, right? You know, offensively, your offense is going to be legit. Bregman, as we mentioned at Fenway, is excellent. Rafael Devers, for as bad defensively as he is, I think he's somehow still one of the most underrated players in Major League Baseball when it comes to the offensive portion of the game. Like, he should have been an all-star last year. There probably could have been a case where he was an all-star starter. I know Jose Ramirez ended up being the starter for the AL, but there could have been a case where he was an all-star starter. It's a good offensive problem to have. It's just about mitigating defensive disaster. And so I think the strategy that they're going to take is it's going to be Devers at third, Bregman at second, and Yoshida will continue to be your DH. Now, with that being said, the $40 million and knowing that Bregman is probably going to play second, to tie this back into the Phillies and the conversation about it always was going to be Alec Bohm, and it always made sense for it to be Alec Bohm, $40 million a year is probably an overpay for Alex Bregman. Not to say he's a bad player, but I think $40 million AAV might be a little bit of an overpay for a guy like Bregman. The Phillies were never going to be able to match that kind of money. We've talked about it all offseason. They've been in kind of a salary cap, not salary cap, but like a cap. They've had a cap on how much they're willing to spend whether it be through their revenue streams or whether it be through whatever their budget was, whatever their budgetary constraints were, $40 million was never going to play into the conversation. Even if they traded Bohm and Ranger Suarez and whomever else they were going to be able to help shed salary, unless they were just going to blow through the luxury tax threshold, which I guess is certainly possible, right? I guess it's possible that they said, bleep it, we're going to do this. But from every indication that they gave us beginning in the offseason through now, that was never going to be the case. So $40 million just a year never made any sense for the Phillies. So Alex Bregman in this particular scenario never was a true play, I think. I think if there was a midterm deal, like 4 or 5 years, because I don't think the Phillies wanted to go 6 or 7 like he initially asked for. And I don't think in this scenario, even though the Phillies have been a team that's willing to go more years to keep the AAV down, I don't think they were wanting to go a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year deal. And so that sweet spot probably was going to be in the 4-year range, and he ended up settling for 3. But the AAV was just too high, I think, for what the Phillies were going to try to acquire, or willing to spend. So it was never going to be Alex Bregman. That brings us to Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado was the second piece in this conversation. And before we get to Nolan Arenado, let me take a break here on PHLY Phillies Podcast and tell you about some of our incredible friends and our incredible sponsors here at PHLY. And first, let me tell you about our friends at Bet365, because it is never ordinary with Bet365. 90 million users, will tell you that that is the case. They offer 780,000 live streams of events each year. And of course, one of my favorite things is the early payout across the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, and MLB. So depending on the sport, there's different parameters. But if your team is up big in any particular game, Bet365 is going to help you cash out early. You're not going to have to sweat, is there going to be a miraculous comeback? Now, if you bet the Birds in the big game this past weekend, then you probably didn't have to worry about that miraculous comeback, because at 34-0 and 34-6, you would have cashed out for your NFL early payout bet. But it works across NHL, pro basketball, pro baseball as well. With the baseball season coming up, you're going to want to get in on the action. And if your team is up late in the game, and you don't have to sweat about it, you've already cashed out with our friends at Bet365. And how about this? New users, breaking news from Bet365. New users get $100 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. So all you have to do is sign up and use the promo code PHLY365, deposit just $10 and make your first bet for $5 and get $100 in bonus bets, whether you win or you lose. Bets can be used on spreads, totals, props, futures, parlays, and so much more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And how about our friends over at Golden Nugget Jeweler? My friends, if you're watching this, it's not too late. It is Valentine's Day for your significant other. So if you forgot a gift, if you forgot that gift, you know the one I'm talking about, head on over to our friends over at Golden Nugget Jeweler, because they've been on the corner of 8th and Chestnut for over 30 years. And why is that? Because they provide excellent customer service and the absolute very best in jewelry. And it's not just engagement rings. If you're looking to pop the question, it's an easy answer to head on over to Golden Nugget Jeweler. But again, it's Valentine's Day today. Don't forget it. Don't forget the gift for your significant other. They offer incredible watches, bracelets, earrings, sparkling diamond necklaces, and so much more. They have a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, but it's not just about getting engaged and popping the question and spending the rest of your life with your special someone. Head on over to Golden Nugget Jewelers. They have been family-owned and operated business since 1987. Again, right on the corner of 8th and Chestnut in downtown Philly. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jeweler, it's where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. And yes, we talked about Alex Bregman. Now it's time to turn our attention to another conversation piece that really kind of dictated the airwaves and dictated social media for the Phillies, for not just the Phillies, but for a lot of teams over the last couple of months, and continues to do so. And that's St. Louis Cardinals third baseman Nolan Arenado. First and foremost, Nolan Arenado earned his contract when he signed it with the St. Louis Cardinals, I believe back in 2020 it was, or 2021. Whatever year it was that Arenado signed his 7-year deal, he had earned his contract. At one point, Nolan Arenado had won 10 consecutive Gold Gloves at third base. He was a routine platinum glove winner and a doubles machine and an extra base hits machine. But now that Nolan Arenado has begun to take a dip in his career, his no trade clause, paired with the fact that the St. Louis Cardinals seemingly have very little interest in balking at the number that they've set. Now, I don't know what the number is, but whatever number that they've set for the amount that they're willing to eat on a contract for Nolan Arenado has made it finding a trade partner, that old two to tango thing, has made finding a trade partner very, very difficult. Nolan Arenado himself said he's only willing to go to 6 teams. Here are the 6 teams he laid out that he would be willing to waive his no trade clause for: the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, the Los Angeles Angels, the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Boston Red Sox. Well, one of those, my friend, it seems like, my friends, you seems like you can take them out of the conversation. That, of course, is the team we just talked about in the Boston Red Sox. So if the Red Sox don't want to be trade partners with the St. Louis Cardinals, that leaves the Cardinals and ownership with 5 teams that they're willing to make a deal with. The answer to that should be it's 4 teams. The Phillies should not be interested in Nolan Arenado. The reason is, I think there's a multitude of reasons, actually. First and foremost, Nolan Arenado is still owed $52 million over the next 3 seasons, including $21 million this year coming up. Whatever the number that the Cardinals have said that they're willing to eat on that salary, an undisclosed amount, the reports have said they're not willing to move off of that number. So if you're not willing to budge off of whatever number it is, it's not a high enough number for other teams to be willing to give up prospects, or in this case, maybe a multitude of prospects or young players, to acquire Arenado's services. Don't get me wrong. Again, Nolan Arenado is still a very good player. I think defensively, while the metrics have come down a little bit, the metrics have come down defensively from Nolan Arenado being, as we mentioned, a 10-time Gold Glove winner, a multi-time Platinum Glove winner, to being a good defensive third baseman. Metrics dip for certain players, and they go from being like average to bad or good to average. Arenado's defensive metrics have taken a step back. There's no question about it. But like, this is the eyeballs versus numbers conversation. My eyeballs tell me he's still a decent defensive third baseman. I think in 2023 specifically, the back injury really hampered him defensively. He went from a 19 defensive run saved in 2022 to a 1, I believe, in 2023. That's unlike Nolan Arenado. I think with the back being a little bit more stable and a little bit more healthy, I expect his defensive numbers to stabilize a little bit. I don't think they're ever going to get back to the 19 DRS that he was in 2022 or the ridiculous numbers that he was for a decade in Colorado and the beginning portions of St. Louis when he was traded to St. Louis. But I don't think he's going to be as bad as he was defensively in 2022. Here's the offensive concern that I have with Nolan Arenado. And Andrew, if you can show the numbers for Nolan Arenado over the last 4 seasons. The one thing that is concerning me, and it's beyond numeric. The one thing that concerns me is that he's barreled fewer balls. He's continuing to barrel fewer balls as the seasons go on. And last year was a career low in barreled balls for a full season with just 16. And he had his lowest percentage of barrel balls per swing in 2024 at 2.5%. His average exit velocity dipped to a career low, and he was in the bottom 10 percentile across Major League Baseball in average exit velocity. But the thing that jumps out to me the most is the fact that his extra base hit numbers have dropped so significantly. He was a power hitter without, it almost feels like he was a sneaky power hitter, right? And you can see it in 2021, 34 home runs paired with an extra 37 base hits combines for 71 extra base hits. So, and by the way, what I did there was take the doubles and triples and add them to the home runs. So it was 37 doubles and triples combined, 34 home runs. 2022, a similarly excellent season, 30 home runs, 73 extra base hits. But you can see over the last 2 seasons, the OPS the OPS too, but the slugging continues to drop. He had a little bit of a surge in 22 compared to 21, but he was just shy of 500 slugging in 21. An excellent season for him, even if the average and on-base percentage weren't the greatest in the world. But the slugging was excellent, just shy of 500. In 2022, it was even better at 533. But it dropped almost 80 points from 22 to 23. And I think you can probably attribute that again to the back problems. And it dropped to a career low 394 in 2024. That 394 is, other than, I believe, his rookie year when he didn't play a full season, it's actually, I lied. It's his first time he's dropped below 394. So with that being said, Arenado, gaps-wise and power-wise, is going in the wrong direction. To me, this is the type of guy that you're willing to acquire if St. Louis is going to take on more money or you have monetary flexibility. He's still, again, a good player. But last year, he only had 26 extra base hits. 23 extra base hits. The year prior, 26. So after hitting 54 or more for 3 consecutive years, you're talking about, that's doubles. I apologize. After hitting 30 or more doubles every year since 2014, every full season, he only hit 26 and 23 each of the last 2 seasons. So the slugging is down, the power's down, the gaps power's down. To me, this is the type of guy at this point in his career that you're willing to take on, A, if you do have monetary flexibility, or B, the Cardinals need to budge off of what their monetary ask is going to be, or the return is just not going to be very good. And I understand that $52 million is not exactly what it used to be. Again, we talked about monetary value and return on investment when we talked about Max Kepler. But $21 million this season, I think, is the big one that's going to stand out for a lot of people, because I think 16 over the next 2 in 26 and 27 is certainly manageable for Nolan Arenado. But with that all being said, this brings us to the point of Alec Bohm. Bohm and the Phillies avoided arbitration this year at $7.7 million, making him on an AAV basis the 15th highest paid third baseman in baseball in 2025, assuming that Alex Bregman plays second base. If Alex Bregman plays third, he's the 16th highest paid player in 2025 at the third base position. I've been saying this for a while now. Even if Bohm's first half of 2025 was an outlier more than the norm, where are you finding the type of productivity that Bohm has provided the Phillies for less than $8 million a season? Over the last 3 years, Alec Bohm has averaged a slash line of 278, 325, 427. He's hit 99 doubles, picked up 152 extra base hits, and struck out on average less than 100 times per season. He's accumulated a slightly above average OPS plus of 108, but I really attribute that due in large part to the limited amount of home runs that Alec Bohm hits. I know he only has 48 home runs over the last 3 seasons, and his defensive metrics are not off the charts. But what Alec Bohm provides you when he's not in his own head, which is part of the problem that we saw in the end of 2024, I think things spiraled quickly for him on the field that led to the outbursts, the slamming of the helmets, seemingly just not being the type of player mentally that he was at the beginning of 2024. When everything works out well for Alec Bohm, he's an everyday third baseman who made his first All-Star game in 2024. You are not finding an everyday third baseman who are borderline All-Stars for $7.7 million per season. It just doesn't happen. And so for me, regardless of the conversation of Alex Bregman, regardless of the conversation of Nolan Arenado, and most importantly, regardless of the conversation of the Phillies running it back, and I know that that's become a tiresome conversation for a lot of Phillies fans heading into 2025. And I know I use the proverbial bang your head against the brick wall analogy a lot. You're probably tired of me hearing me say that. But in Alec Bohm's case specifically, for the monetary value that Alec Bohm provides and what he provides you on the field, I don't think you're going to get a better return on investment than what Alec Bohm would give you. And by the way, Alec Bohm's not a free agent at the end of next year. He has his final year of arbitration for the 2026 season and doesn't become an unrestricted free agent until 2027. The Phillies have monetary flexibility with Bohm that you would not get from other players, that you would not get from other members of Major League Baseball, especially guys that are on free agent type contracts. And that is why, to me, when all of this has been said and done, it always made sense that Alec Bohm was going to be the starting third baseman for the Phillies in 2025. All right, one final quick note before we get out of here for today's show. Edmundo Sosa, reported by Todd Zolecki, has been taking reps in the outfield, or will take reps in the outfield this spring training. And this is not to say that Edmundo Sosa is going to become an everyday outfielder. I think their outfield's set. I think it's going to be Kepler in left, a pairing of Marsh and Rojas in center, and Nick Castellanos in right. But what this does for Edmundo Sosa, what this does for the Phillies, is provide flexibility. Edmundo Sosa is an excellent bench piece. Edmundo Sosa is the type of guy who provides you positional versatility. He's by trade a shortstop. I think he's best suited to be a shortstop, but he can play second, he can play third, and if he can add the outfield to his bag, it's one additional thing that the Phillies have in their bag of tricks that they're going to be able to utilize for this offense. Because quite frankly, if we're being honest with ourselves, the bench isn't very good heading into 2025. It really wasn't addressed all that much, other than the fact that one of Max Kepler, Johan Rojas, or Brandon Marsh will not be in the starting lineup on any given night to provide you some semblance of flexibility. For example, if Max Kepler doesn't start on a given night, you feel pretty comfortable with Kepler coming off the bench against a right-handed pitcher, maybe to replace Johan Rojas late in the game. You'll slide Brandon Marsh over to center. Max Kepler will go to left, type of situation. But I don't think this bench is not particularly good. Edmundo Sosa is probably the best bench piece that they have. And that's not a knock on Sosa. That's just a worry about the rest of the bench. Sosa's the best bench piece I think that they have. And if he's capable of playing, instead of being capable of playing 3 different positions, well, I guess it's really 4, right? Anybody's capable of being your DH on any given night. If he's capable of playing, instead of 3 different positions, being capable of playing 5 different positions, being able to maybe play left and right, or maybe they feel comfortable because he's a fairly athletic guy, playing a little bit of center if called upon. I think it'll probably be more corner outfield than anything else. My guess would be left more times than not. But it provides you positional flexibility. And as the great Herb Brooks once said in Miracle, what's it all about, boys? Options, right? It's about having options and providing positional flexibility. And that's important to this Phillies team, because when you take a look at the rest of the bench, like I said, it's going to be whomever doesn't start in the outfield. It'll be Sosa. It'll be Rafael Marchand. We'll talk more about that in a video coming up. I think it's going to be Rafael Marchand. I would be surprised if it's not, due to the options thing, plus the weird contract that Garrett Stubbs signed. My guess would be Marchand as your backup catcher. And then you're talking about perhaps one other player. It comes down to, do you carry an extra arm to begin the season? And is that extra arm, Taijuan Walker, Joe Ross type of pitcher? If not, you're probably thinking about Weston Wilson, or one of those type of guys, another guy with versatility, but it's probably Weston Wilson would be my guess. But the whole point of this conversation is, if Edmundo Sosa can provide this team with positional flexibility for relatively little money, I think they're going to take every advantage or every opportunity that they possibly can. I would expect when Sosa plays, more times than not, it's going to be shortstop, third base, second base, giving guys reprieves, giving Trey Turner a reprieve, giving Bryson Stott a reprieve, giving Alec Bohm a reprieve. It'll be in the infield. Specifically, I think mostly in the middle infield. But if you can play the outfield a little bit, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a difference maker, but it certainly doesn't hurt. All right, that'll pretty much wrap things up here for the PHLY Phillies podcast here on this Friday. I do want to hearken just very quickly. I want to hearken this from my heart and everybody here at PHLY. Enjoy today. Enjoy the parade. Have an absolute blast. Your Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champs for the second time. Enjoy it. Document it. Take video. Take pictures. Send them to us if you don't mind. We'd love to see what you're doing and where you're at. But above everything else, please be safe. I care more about your safety than the fun that you might have. Please be safe. Please be responsible. I'm not your dad. I'm not going to tell you how to live. But if we can all be safe and keep this a a safe environment and a fun environment. I think we're going to have a blast. Enjoy it, celebrate it, gloat in it. Tell the Cowboys fans in your life and the Commanders fans in your life and the Giants fans in your life that you're better than them, because right now you are. But please enjoy the parade. We'll be down there all day, broadcasting live, taking videos, taking photos, and check out Vinny Curry. I think Vinny Curry may be on his own personal float. I don't know where he's going to be, but I'm sure he's going to take some amazing shots. So a big thank you to you for tuning in. Thank you for everybody who checks out PHLY on a daily basis. Make sure you're hitting the thumbs up button on the way out, please. Hit the subscribe button if you are not a subscriber to PHLY. And of course, keep an eye out for all of the amazing content that PHLY is going to have here on a daily basis, but specifically coming up for the parade in the next couple of hours. Big thank you to Andrew Frazier for producing today's show. We'll be back Monday with a live episode, and of course throughout the week with some of our episodic short videos as we continue to get closer and closer to spring training and opening day. Not that far away. We'll check back in with you Monday right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.